Reflecting on her painful reality, she muses that life feels easier without holding onto any expectations. A quiet moment passes in the silent void as the heavy emotional weight settles in completely. The tense silence stretches further while shadows deepen around the edges of her fading desperate hopes. Gazing at the unexpected gift, she asks Lord Keios in sheer disbelief if they are for her. He coldly admits giving identical flowers to Princess Caroline earlier because they suited her quite well. Handing over the remaining blossoms, he casually remarks that they will probably suit her just fine too. Accepting the bitter truth, she decides not to care anymore despite him constantly prioritizing Princess Caroline. Bearing the heavy burden of her neglected heart, Lady Nicole Portlet finally makes a life-changing resolution. Turning her back on the painful rejection, she firmly decides that she will walk her path alone. Many academy events like the Grand Soirée help prepare young aristocrats for their future high social lives. During these elegant academy gatherings, students naturally attend as romantic couples if they have a fiancé. Sighing out of sheer boredom, she notes that unengaged students usually attend alongside close friends or family. Among high-ranking nobles like counts, having an arranged fiancé before enrolling at the academy is completely normal. Whispering noblewomen mockingly pity her for being entirely by herself again, though they remain utterly unsurprised. The gossiping girls cruelly agree that the isolated girl could never measure up to the perfect princess. Beautiful and intelligent Princess Caroline serves as the flawless student council president adored by all academy nobles. Enchanted childhood friend Lord Keios diligently supports the proud princess while striving to become her loyal knight. Feeling increasingly abandoned, she notes sadly that his constant neglect of his fiancée has only worsened lately. Reminiscing on their early engagement, she recalls exchanging brief letters and meeting for occasional quiet tea times. Heartbroken by the complete silence, she reveals he stopped replying to letters and abandoned their tea invitations. Despite feeling immense sadness and trying to communicate, she eventually gave up expecting anything from the unchanging man. Realizing he only ever thinks about Princess Caroline, she decides it should be completely fine to leave. The majestic academy stands tall against the bright sky as a new day of bustling activity begins. Anticipating the upcoming traders' market, she wonders curiously about what exciting new trends will emerge this year. Observing the joyful atmosphere, she realizes everyone has been in wonderfully high spirits because of the upcoming festivities. Every year, noblewomen eagerly look forward to shopping with their fiancés during the upcoming town break event. Dreading the inevitable awkwardness, she admits to herself that she really does not want to invite Lord Keios. A shadow of regret crosses her face, remembering her painful memories of the traders' market from last year. Standing by the accessory merchant, he rudely pondered how beautiful the hair ornaments would look on Princess Caroline. Lingering in front of the bookseller, he recognized a volume that Princess Caroline had been reading before. Obsessing endlessly over the princess, he even declared a displayed sword would be perfect for his beloved Caroline. Reaching her absolute breaking point, she coldly suggested ending their miserable date if he only cared about Caroline. Scolding her for being upset over trivialities, he arrogantly claimed he sacrificed his sword training just for her. Impressed by her own past resilience, she recalls holding back bitter tears before they went their separate ways. Hiding her deepest desires, she admits in truth there was something she had really wanted that fateful day. Legend claims the fashionable rainbow shining stone bracelets from a neighboring country bring ultimate happiness to matching fiancés. A lingering sense of unspoken longing hangs heavily in the quiet air as she contemplates her hidden wishes. Staring thoughtfully into the distance, she wonders hopefully if that specific foreign merchant will return again this year. Startled from her deep thoughts, she answers her mother asking if Lord Keios was invited to the market. Hesitating with a heavy heart, she finally confesses to her urging mother that she has not invited him yet. Torn between wanting to see the rare annual event and dreading another outing, she reconsiders attending. Staring thoughtfully ahead, she quietly contemplates the freeing possibility of going to the market entirely alone. A quiet moment of profound realization washes over her as she firmly resolves to embrace independence. Suddenly struck by a brilliant idea, she excitedly realizes that she could indeed attend the festival alone. Reasoning logically, she notes that town will be bustling with diverse families and friendly non-academy groups. Comforting her own doubts, she reminds herself that attending with a fiancé is not a strict requirement. Embracing her freedom, she gleefully anticipates wandering the vibrant market alone without anything bringing her down. Angrily prioritizing her own desires, she declares that Lord Keios can just spend time with Princess Caroline. Arriving at the bustling market on the highly anticipated day, she observes visiting families and friend groups. Scanning the lively crowds, she confirms her earlier suspicions that attendees mostly consist of paired romantic couples. Taking a confident step forward, she bravely ventures into the vibrant festival, completely unfazed by paired crowds. Fascinated by the sparkling displays, she gazes in pure awe at the beautifully decorated market stalls. Admiring the lovely merchandise on display, she warmly expresses her fond appreciation for the beautiful items. Surprised by her solitary presence, a curious merchant politely asks the young madam if she is alone. Stammering a hesitant yes, she relaxes when the understanding vendor kindly encourages her to take her time. Completing her independent purchase, she politely requests chosen items and receives a courteous confirmation from the seller. Letting out a soft sigh of immense relief, she successfully navigates her very first independent shopping interaction. Surprised by how smoothly everything is going, she happily requests specific items while admiring the pretty wares. Tasting a wonderfully sweet treat, she happily declares that the delicious crepe she bought is simply wonderful. Reveling in her absolute freedom, she joyfully celebrates walking anywhere and eating whatever she entirely pleases. Continuing her joyous solo adventure, she successfully locates the specific bracelet merchant she desperately wanted to find. Shimmering brightly in the soft light, the magnificent beautiful jewels immediately capture her completely undivided, fascinated attention. Letting out a soft gasp of pure awe, she stares blankly at the breathtakingly gorgeous merchant display. Boasting about his impressive wares, the merchant proudly explains that the beautiful stones shine like magical rainbows. Hesitating nervously before the vendor, she politely asks if purchasing just one single bracelet would be alright. Her heart pounds rapidly with deep nervous anticipation while she anxiously awaits the smiling merchant's final decision. Smiling warmly at her request, the friendly merchant enthusiastically confirms he will gladly sell her a piece. Gasping with sheer delight, she gratefully thanks the kind vendor for his incredibly generous and accommodating offer. Overflowing with confident joy, she definitively concludes that going alone was right and vows to return solo. Flashing back a few days before the highly anticipated market, a completely different perspective slowly unfolds. Recalling the upcoming weekend festivities, Lord Keios suddenly remembers that the annual traders' market is taking place. Sighing heavily in deep annoyance, he arrogantly assumes Nicole will predictably send him another bothersome invitation tomorrow. Heading home early for the day, he casually confirms seeing his surprised observant peers again tomorrow. Walking away from the busy academy grounds, he smoothly wishes his fellow students good work today. Shocked by the completely unexpected silence, he realizes, contrary to his firm belief, that her letter vanished. The baffling silence stretches endlessly as he receives absolutely no messages from her on the following days. Standing alone in complete confusion, he waits silently in empty halls as his smug expectations slowly crumble. Time passes swiftly without any word from her until it is suddenly the day before the grand market. Ignoring nearby students wishing good days and eagerly anticipating tomorrow, he remains fixated on her unexpected absence. Deluding himself with immense arrogance, he wonders hopefully if she might be planning to invite him tomorrow. Greeting him warmly upon his arrival, the loyal servant formally welcomes the esteemed master back home. Pacing anxiously in his room, he wonders if she plans to come and invite him tomorrow. As the highly anticipated day of the vibrant town market finally dawns, precious time ticks slowly away. The tense atmosphere thickens heavily as the deafening silence stretches out during his prolonged agonizing wait. Fully dressed and waiting, he furiously curses while angrily questioning why she has not arrived yet. Reaching his absolute breaking point, he firmly decides he must immediately go see her in person. Arriving swiftly at her grand estate, a startled maid loudly exclaims Lord Keios' name in surprise. The thoroughly confused maid explains that Lady Nicole already left for the bustling market without him. Shocked by the unexpected revelation, he desperately rationalizes that she surely must have gone with friends. Ignoring the bewildered maid, he storms off while furiously cursing his fiancé for leaving without notice. Finally tracking her down, he aggressively demands to know exactly who accompanied her to the market. Warning her fiercely not to lie, he receives her calm confession that she went entirely alone. Maintaining her graceful composure, she firmly insists she is not lying and truly went by herself. A tense beat of absolute silence passes as he stares at her in complete utter disbelief. Observing her unwavering honest expression, he internally struggles to accept that she genuinely went completely alone. Panicking loudly, he angrily scolds her for wandering alone while frantically worrying about her personal safety. Completely unfazed by his outburst, she logically points out they never made any plans to go. He freezes completely in place as the heavy weight of her undeniably true statement hits him. Desperately backpedaling, he stammers that despite having no plans, she obviously should have accompanied her fiancé. Losing his aggressive momentum, he awkwardly hesitates before quietly asking why she never came to invite him. She honestly explains he seemingly wanted to return home instead of enjoying their date last year. Leaving him utterly speechless, she calmly states her thoughtful decision not to bother him this upcoming year. Looking at him with cool detachment, she definitively confirms her firm choice to simply not invite him. Smiling with polite finality, she firmly insists that he absolutely does not need to worry about her. Panicking as she turns away, he desperately demands to know exactly what Nicole is trying to do. Establishing common academy law, it is noted that young nobles marry immediately following their graduation. Enjoying their youth, students commonly spend academy days having tea and going on dates with fiancés. Gossiping students express pity, wondering if Lord Keios rejected Lady Nicole since she attended the market alone. Hearing her name called out gently, Lady Nicole turns politely to acknowledge the approaching academy students. The inquisitive girls ask if she heard rumors regarding a magical park bringing eternal happiness to lovers. Processing the sudden unexpected question, she pauses quietly as the noisy background chatter fades away completely. Maintaining her elegant composure, she smiles gracefully and tells them the rumored location sounds very interesting. Promising to mention it, she secretly thinks Keios would strongly prefer visiting with Princess Caroline instead. Bowing with practiced aristocratic grace, she formally excuses herself, claiming a sudden need to attend class. Walking away, she logically concludes Keios would despise going, so she abandons any desire to invite him. Realizing the massive benefits of solitude, she joyfully embraces relaxing this weekend without preparing tedious tea invitations. Her newly discovered glorious freedom excitingly stretches across this week, extending fully into the upcoming consecutive weeks. Picturing a peaceful afternoon, she eagerly decides visiting the local bookstore sounds absolutely lovely right now. Arriving at the bustling cafeteria line, hungry students continuously shout out their respective daily meal orders. Immersed in the lively atmosphere, she waits patiently alongside the loudly chatting crowd of hungry students. The helpful cafeteria worker cheerfully assumes she wants her completely usual sad boxed lunch prepared immediately. Surprising the confident worker, she boldly rejects the typical box and firmly requests the hot lunch instead. Staring in complete absolute shock, the deeply confused cafeteria worker frozenly processes her unexpected meal choice. Walking away with her hot tray, she accurately notes how incredibly surprised the cafeteria worker seemed. Showing empathetic understanding, she internally admits her previous strict habit of always ordering the boxed lunches. Recalling academy traditions, she notes fiancés normally escort their partners to enjoy romantic daily lunch breaks together. Remembering past loneliness, she recalls dining with lower nobles because busy Keios always chose council members instead. Her heartbreaking realization struck upon discovering every other busy council member actually visited their fiancés weekly. Escaping the awkward pity of her dining companions, she started eating boxed lunches alone in the courtyard. Reaching a powerful personal turning point, she fiercely rejects her previously tragic and completely isolated existence. Embracing absolute independence, she fiercely declares her right to eat comfortably alone wherever she truly desires. Ignoring any weird judging stares, she excitedly anticipates finally eating a delicious, nice warm cafeteria lunch. Sitting down peacefully with her warm meal, a bright sparkling aura of pure joy surrounds her. Tasting the glorious hot food, she enters absolute blissful euphoria, savoring every single incredibly delicious bite. Spotting her unusual presence, admiring students softly murmur about Lady Nicole finally eating inside the lunch hall. Feeling immense pity seeing her dining completely alone, sympathetic classmates decide to approach and offer friendly conversation. Calling out her noble name with bright, friendly enthusiasm, the cheerful classmates eagerly capture her attention. Gesturing toward the empty surrounding chairs, they politely ask if sitting beside her would be perfectly acceptable. Flashing a genuinely welcoming smile, she graciously invites the friendly girls to sit down immediately beside her. Noting her oddly cheery mood, they ask if something good happened while she calmly credits the lunch. Keeping her simple joy totally secret, she hilariously realizes explaining her love for warm food sounds pathetic. The pleasant atmosphere suddenly shatters as Lady Lobelia dramatically announces her highly imposing and unexpected arrival. Smirking condescendingly, Lady Lobelia mocks her curious cafeteria presence while loudly highlighting Lord Keios missing again today. Weaponizing cruel gossip, Lobelia interrogates her, asking how often Keios actually visits compared to other council members. Feigning dramatic sympathy, Lobelia awfully suggests he visits maybe once every 2 months to maximize maximum humiliation. Hearing the shocking revelation, the astonished girl softly exclaims, "Oh no," realizing he has not done that. A silent, tense moment passes heavily as the overwhelming weight of the shocking situation fully settles in. Clarifying her absolute stance, she firmly insists he has not done that ever since they initially enrolled. Utterly confused by the news, the stunned group stammers in complete disbelief, citing his unusually busy schedule. Shaking their heads in pure shock, the surrounding girls whisper quietly that it just cannot possibly be. Overwhelmed by the heartbreaking reality, someone loudly cries out that his severe neglect is just completely cruel. Hearing a dramatic wail from Lady Lobelia nearby, students anxiously ask if something terrible has just happened. Shrugging off the chaotic drama, she calmly suggests finishing their warm lunch before it completely gets cold. Acknowledging the pitiful truth, she honestly admits feeling genuinely glad they avoided sharing a deeply awkward lunch. While she finds comfortable peace alone, the dramatic Lobelia loudly complains to her concerned fiancé Lord Emilio. Reflecting on her newly found independence, she notes that being completely alone at the academy became significantly easier. Walking with slow, steady confidence, she happily realizes the cruel mocking crowds finally stopped gossiping about her. Remembering the constant harsh whispers, she peacefully appreciates the wonderfully comforting silence that now beautifully surrounds her. Suddenly recalling upcoming events, a cheerful classmate eagerly announces that the Grand Flower Festival is approaching soon. Explaining the beloved tradition, she notes noble ladies eagerly await receiving beautiful flowers from their devoted fiancés. Bursting with bright, joyous excitement, the enthusiastic girls happily suggest guessing which lovely flowers they will receive. Turning their completely undivided attention toward her, they politely invite Lady Nicole to join their joyful guessing. Politely declining their sweet invitation, she firmly declares her complete disinterest in receiving his unwanted leftover gifts. Shocking the deeply confused girls, she plainly explains Keios only gave her leftovers previously gifted to Caroline. Gasping loudly in absolute sheer horror, the deeply appalled girls question how he could commit such cruelty. Receiving their loud, terrified sympathy, she calmly resolves to simply skip the upcoming event entirely this time. Releasing herself from painful expectations, she firmly decides against seeing him or expecting any flowers this year. Flashing back to a heartbreaking memory, she painfully remembers someone admiring the incredibly beautiful blooming flower arrangement. Delivering the devastatingly crushing blow, he arrogantly admitted giving those exact beautiful blossoms to Princess Caroline earlier. Staring thoughtfully into the quiet distance, she internally admits any tiny remaining bit of love silently died. Smiling with pure genuine relief, she happily declares a massive burden lifted while embracing her new life. Shifting the scene completely, a curious council member suddenly asks Keios if he has been meeting his fiancée. Questioning his unusually quiet behavior, the friend notes Keios used to constantly mention having plans with her. Pressing the serious matter further, a concerned friend notes he surprisingly spends all his precious time with them. Freezing in his arrogant tracks, Keios struggles to remember the distant last time he had tea with Nicole. Realizing the massive disturbing silence, he suddenly remembers he also completely stopped receiving her regular sweet letters. Chiming into the tense conversation, Lord Albert casually mentions seeing his lovely fiancée exploring town the other day. Deepening the incredibly awkward tension, Lord Albert calmly observes that the young lady was out shopping entirely alone. Joining the growing intervention, Lord Zeke explains, spotting the wary girl eagerly looking over numerous bookstore novels. Continuing his unexpected story, Zeke notes she seemed relieved after learning his prestigious student council member status. Revealing a profoundly pathetic detail, Zeke mentions she ironically held a book Keios had previously loaned out. The suffocating heavy silence deeply crushes the arrogant boy as the humiliating reality of his neglect sinks in. Offering stern yet gentle advice, his observant friend firmly warns him to absolutely not neglect his lovely fiancée. Bowing his head in deep profound shame, the deeply humbled boy quietly mutters that he completely understands. Reflecting on his severe failures, he finally admits spending too much time with Caroline instead of sweet Nicole. Preparing for Princess Caroline's engagement to a foreign prince 13 years her senior is almost completely finished. Fearing he might never see Caroline again after she leaves, he desperately wants to heavily support her. Feeling deeply anxious about Nicole wandering town alone like before, he realizes the situation is incredibly unsafe. Pondering why she wanders alone, he admits to a friend asking about the upcoming flower festival preparations. Recalling last year, he remembers buying pretty white flowers and saving one specifically for Princess Caroline's desk. Admitting his complete ignorance about flowers, he carelessly decides to simply buy the exact same white ones. Suddenly struck by a familiar realization, a surprising new thought quickly interrupts his entirely oblivious ongoing planning. Meanwhile, Nicole correctly assumes Lord Keios might unfortunately try buying her obligatory flowers just like last year. Resolving the annoying issue, she happily decides to inform him that he completely should not bother trying. Arriving quickly, the highly anticipated day of the Grand Flower Festival completely transforms the bustling academy grounds. Enjoying their lesson-free day, countless happy couples joyfully exchange beautiful flowers before heading into the vibrant town. Staring thoughtfully at the beautiful sky, she confidently imagines how incredibly dazzling the busy town will look. Planning to visit town herself, she suddenly halts when concerned classmates anxiously call out to stop her. Confirming her solo plans, she faces intense warnings about unsavory types harassing women walking without protective flowers. Continuing their frantic warnings, the distressed girls forcefully insist that her solo journey is completely utterly unsafe. Graciously thanking Lady Lobelia for her concern, she calmly insists she is perfectly accustomed to walking alone. Ignoring their lingering doubts, she confidently promises to easily avoid dark alleys by staying near bustling crowds. Brushing off their incredibly persistent worries, she formally excuses herself and gracefully departs toward the festival grounds. Stumbling slightly in the bustling festive crowd, a sudden unexpected encounter completely halts her determined forward momentum. Recognizing her immediately from the local bookstore, Lord Zeke warmly greets Lady Nicole in the crowded academy hall. Pleasantly surprised by his memory, she listens as he curiously asks which specific book she finally chose. Explaining her alternate book choice, she faces his sudden inquiry regarding her completely flowerless current solitary state. Hearing her town plans, he politely offers an escort, assuming she will undoubtedly meet busy Lord Keios. Firmly declining his generous escort offer, she coldly states that seeing Lord Keios is entirely completely unnecessary. A heavy shocked silence completely envelops Lord Zeke as he processes her stunningly blunt and indifferent rejection. Assuring the stunned boy, she boldly reveals, telling Keios not to bother preparing any obligatory festival flowers. Smiling gracefully after her shocking confession, she prepares to confidently walk away from the deeply confused boy. Breaking the incredibly awkward tension, she politely asks the deeply stunned council member if she may leave. Snapping out of his absolute shock, Zeke frantically yells for her to wait and stay right there. Promising to return quickly, Zeke dramatically sprints away while loudly screaming Keios' name across the busy courtyard. Bursting into the council room, Zeke aggressively interrogates a completely bewildered Keios about preparing flowers for Nicole. Screaming in absolute sheer terror, Zeke completely loses his mind when Keios blankly confirms buying nothing whatsoever. Stuttering furiously at the foolish boy, Zeke listens as Keios smoothly explains receiving her completely dismissive letter. Calling him completely insane, Zeke aggressively demands to know if Keios is actively trying to break his engagement. Grabbing his dense friend firmly, Zeke forcefully commands the entirely clueless Keios to carefully listen to him. Fiercely explaining the dire situation, he warns that his neglected fiancé is heading into town entirely alone. Hitting him with harsh reality, Zeke explains that walking flowerless practically announces she is completely romantically unattached. Highlighting the massive social disaster, Zeke warns that absolutely everyone will judge her totally humiliating abandoned status. Processing the horrifying implications, Keios finally realizes the entire town will loudly view him as a horrible man. Screaming at him to move, Zeke aggressively orders the still incredibly confused Keios to immediately find Nicole. Commanding Keios to leave immediately, Zeke fiercely orders him to go now to find her. Sprinting frantically through the busy town, Keios desperately shouts Nicole's name at the top of his lungs. Startled by his sudden aggressive arrival, she cautiously asks the panting lord exactly what is the matter. Catching his breath, he firmly insists they go together since she is already heading into the town. A tense silence stretches between them as she stares blankly at his utterly unexpected and bold demand. Pointing vaguely toward the merchant stall, he aggressively demands to know exactly which vibrant flowers she wants. Utterly bewildered by his entirely random question, she lets out a very soft sound of pure confusion. Repeating his blunt demand with breathless urgency, he fiercely insists she quickly pick out which flowers she desires. Deeply confused, she incorrectly assumes he wants her opinion on beautiful flowers meant for Princess Caroline instead. Pressing the awkward issue further, she bluntly reminds him about the identical beautiful flowers he gifted Caroline previously. Highlighting his past cruelty, she recalls him openly admitting he gave sweet Caroline the exact same blooms earlier. Panicking nervously, he desperately explains buying one separate new flower specifically for the incredibly busy student council desk. Processing his frantic explanation, she quietly realizes the actual mundane truth behind last year's deeply misunderstood floral gift. Feeling deep embarrassment, she internally panics about telling absolutely everyone she sadly received his completely unwanted leftover gifts. Struck by profound realization, he correctly deduces she completely rejected him to avoid matching perfect Princess Caroline. Misunderstanding her complete apathy as romantic jealousy, he arrogantly decides to entirely clear the silly trivial misunderstanding later. Pushing past the tense awkwardness, he stubbornly commands the deeply bewildered girl to simply just pick a flower. Hesitantly pointing at a gorgeous vibrant display, she carefully selects the orange blooms while he watches in surprise. Smiling brightly with genuine joy, she happily declares that beautifully vibrant orange flowers always cheer her up instantly. Staring in completely stunned absolute silence, he awkwardly processes her radiant, unexpected gorgeous smile over simple vibrant flowers. Hit by sudden crushing guilt, he instantly realizes they officially graduate soon, yet he never learned her favorite color. Staring at his beautiful fiancé, he guiltily deeply admits internally that he barely knows anything about his destined partner. Graciously accepting the bright flowers, she calmly asks if his obligatory fiancé duties are entirely finished today. Tipping her head in mild polite confusion, she gently wonders if the stunned, flustered boy requires something else. Stammering in sheer utter disbelief, he frantically reminds the entirely indifferent beautiful girl that they literally just arrived. Grabbing control of the rapidly failing romantic date, he loudly, excitedly, proudly declares they will visit a local cafe. Hesitating awkwardly, she intensely stares at the deeply flustered, anxious boy with a distinct, painfully reluctant look. Firmly testing his actual true loyalty, she politely, gently questions if he should be busy serving Princess Caroline instead. Defending his bruised ego, he aggressively, strictly insists he only spends time with Caroline during official council work. Nodding dismissively, she secretly internally notes that he consistently appears to be shadowing the perfect princess around the clock. Breaking the incredibly terribly awkward silence, he cautiously safely shifts the heavy conversation toward a completely different serious topic. Expressing sudden protective concern, he firmly, strictly orders her to immediately stop walking around the incredibly dangerous town alone. Widening her beautiful eyes in genuine total surprise, she openly stares at her fiancé, showing completely unexpected, uncharacteristic concern. Assuring him gracefully, she internally marvels in sheer disbelief that Lord Keios actually genuinely worried about her physical safety. Dismissing his incredibly rare concern, she accurately assumes he will quickly forget since he totally lacks any genuine interest. Refusing to drop the highly serious safety issue, he strictly firmly demands she bring protective royal ladies-in-waiting next time. Attempting to flawlessly appease his known obsession, she casually mentions hearing classroom rumors about Caroline thoroughly enjoying foreign teas. Frowning in deep hidden frustration, he awkwardly agrees while wondering exactly why she continually keeps bringing up perfect Caroline. Sighing internally, she correctly deduces they lack mutual conversational topics because he absolutely only ever passionately cares about Caroline. Accepting her painfully tragic destiny, she completely irrevocably resigns herself to never being someone who could possibly please him. Breathing softly as she walks, the young lady quietly strolls through the peaceful academy courtyard. Continuing her quiet, solitary walk, she simply enjoys the peaceful, silent atmosphere of the sunny academy. Closing the book with a deeply satisfied sigh, she happily whispers that the story was wonderful. Holding the fascinating book closely, she thoughtfully notes that this brilliant author is from the neighboring country. Finding their previous book incredibly interesting, she happily admits ending up reading all their fully translated works. Looking at the huge untranslated collection, she sighs softly, realizing there are perfectly still so many left. Gripping the mysterious foreign book tightly, she passionately, intensely declares that she desperately wants to know more. Filled with sudden bright inspiration, she firmly resolves to excitedly study the foreign language to read perfectly. Realizing she is always alone, she sadly notes reading will kill time since Keios ignores her completely. Bursting with newfound joyful purpose, she excitedly decides to immediately visit the library after tomorrow's morning classes. Arriving quickly at the massive library, the eager young lady happily walks through the grand majestic doors. Scanning the massive towering bookshelves, she carefully searches for the highly specific foreign language study materials. Staring blankly at the highly confusing foreign text, she bluntly, hilariously admits she absolutely cannot read anything. Opening her heavy, reliable dictionary, she cheerfully, completely resolves to smartly start by carefully translating the titles. Flipping through her thick dictionary, she slowly reads science and essence while admitting it is quite difficult. Translating marriage laws perfectly, she quickly moves to a completely terrifying title regarding dark blood and curses. Carefully translating the next fascinating text, she slowly pieces together old tales regarding the city of Iverslok. Smiling at her highly successful translation, she smartly deduces these are definitely magical folktales about Iverslok. Identifying the neighboring capital, she happily realizes these simple, charming fairy tales should perfectly be easier reading. Deeply focused, she translates Lives in the Lake while Lord Emilio silently, mysteriously observes her from afar. Watching her quietly from afar, Lord Emilio carefully, distinctly recognizes her as the tragic flower festival lady. Staring intensely at the completely focused reading girl, he accurately identifies her as Lady Lobelia's lonely classmate. Remembering his frantic fiancé's endless worries, he deeply pities the poor lonely girl suffering Keios' cruel obsession. Seeing the tragic girl completely alone, he politely decides he should properly stop and gently say hello. Stepping quietly toward the deeply focused young lady, he gently prepares to initiate a totally polite conversation. Freezing in sheer absolute shock, he quietly overhears her sadly muttering about a deeply unbelievably cruel princess. Thoroughly deeply completely alarmed, Lord Emilio frantically instantly assumes she must be whispering about perfect Princess Caroline. Hiding nervously behind the massive wooden bookshelf, he completely frantically wonders what incredibly cruel tragedy just happened. Continuing her dramatic intense translation, she sadly reads aloud about a completely trampled first love ending tragically. Gasping loudly in absolute sheer unadulterated terror, the completely thoroughly horrified Lord Emilio silently furiously panics completely. Sweating profusely, he desperately analyzes her highly dramatic, incredibly cryptic words regarding a horribly sullied trampled love. Imagining a terrifying, purely horrific, deeply tragic scenario, he accurately clearly envisions Lord Keios acting unbelievably ruthlessly. Concluding completely incorrectly, he frantically fiercely assumes their undeniably incredibly cruel treatment fully totally sullied her heart. Translating the incredibly sad fairy tale ending, she quietly reads about being painfully pelted with heavy stones. Losing his absolute mind completely, he frantically furiously imagines the wildly terribly cruel Lord Keios throwing stones. Reaching a wildly terribly dramatic completely false conclusion, he horribly frantically assumes she faces violent domestic abuse. Grinding his teeth in absolute sheer furious pure rage, he fiercely wholly condemns the entirely terribly unforgivable act. Desiring completely intensely to fiercely violently confront Keios, he absolutely entirely smartly hesitates, fearing making things significantly worse. Taking a very deep anxious shaky breath, he smartly fully completely realizes he absolutely must tread carefully here. Feeling completely deeply incredibly powerless right now, he silently sadly entirely promises to fiercely watch over the girl. Approaching carefully, Lord Emilio looks incredibly concerned, asking if something is the matter because she seems worried. He gently calls out Lobelia's name aloud while gazing at her with a highly protective worried gaze. He softly repeats Lobelia's name, firmly emphasizing his deep lingering concern for her completely utterly panicked state. He strictly warns her beautifully not to tell absolutely anyone about this incredibly sensitive secret information yet. Keios politely bows with respect while formally wishing perfect Princess Caroline a very good and pleasant morning. An incredibly angry stranger suddenly aggressively screams that Keios is a knave and absolute disgrace to men. Startled deeply, Keios furiously demands the stranger's identity while being aggressively cursed to burn in hell forever. As the angry stranger flees, Princess Caroline asks a completely confused Keios if he did something wrong. A curious classmate politely approaches Lady Nicole, asking exactly what fascinating magical book she is reading today. Nicole happily explains a remarkably interesting foreign fairy tale about a beautiful lake fairy loving a human. She chillingly details exactly how an evil princess tragically tricks the man into brutally killing the fairy. Admitting her incredibly deep emotional investment, Nicole softly confesses she actually cried for the deeply heartbroken fairy. Gossip spreads rapidly announcing Princess Caroline's highly upcoming engagement to the illegal crown prince upon academy graduation. Nosy gossiping students instantly excitedly wonder exactly what the fiercely loyal Lord Keios will inevitably do now. Whispering noble girls eagerly debate if he will impossibly join the Imperial Guard or cleverly become diplomat. Overhearing the loud chatter, Nicole silently sadly wonders if he will simply break their engagement before leaving. Although he is a ruling count's heir, students foolishly speculate he could selfishly abandon his inherited duties. They excitedly passionately suggest he might foolishly throw away his powerful position just for beloved Princess Caroline. Ignoring the highly painful rumors, she firmly coldly decides he can absolutely do whatever he truly pleases. Observant gossiping students quickly notice Lady Nicole arriving again today, completely absorbed in studying the Iliadese language. Misunderstanding her incredibly independent efforts, they loudly wildly assume Keios is forcing his fiancée to learn Iliadese. Concluding falsely, they terribly boldly assume he cruelly threatened to cast her aside unless she desperately studied. Gasping loudly in pure utter horror, the naive noble girls loudly proclaim his completely imagined actions cruel. Later, a deeply concerned friend directly fiercely questions an entirely clueless Keios about his severely neglected fiancé. Looking completely totally unbothered, the deeply incredibly ignorant Keios casually replies that absolutely everything has been identical. Startled suddenly by his serious friend's intensely glaring eyes, Keios nervously quickly asks exactly what is wrong. His serious protective friend immediately loudly asks if Keios has heard the absolutely wild rumors circulating campus. He firmly explains everyone fully believes Keios is abandoning Nicole to terribly follow Princess Caroline abroad. Shocked completely, Keios loudly defensively furiously screams that as a ruling count's heir he absolutely cannot leave. His observant friend coldly confirms that Lady Nicole truly is studying elegies quite often in library. Entirely deeply baffled, Keios desperately argues there is absolutely zero real practical need for Nicole learning elegies. The wise serious friend accurately notes that learning another country's language perfectly looks like preparing to move. Highlighting his incredibly massive stupidity, the friend loudly points out Keios always publicly swore to protect Caroline. Sweating incredibly profusely, Keios frantically loudly claims he simply meant supporting Caroline strictly while she remained here. Shutting him completely down, the friend firmly aggressively explains everyone accurately sees him abandoning his neglected fiancé. Overhearing the intense conversation, Princess Caroline gently gracefully apologizes for relying on Keios far too heavily lately. Looking directly intensely at him, she pointedly strictly asks if he truly spends enough time with Nicole. Caroline severely angrily reprimands him, recalling multiple devastating heartbreaking times Nicole bravely went into town entirely alone. Humbled entirely completely, Keios quietly submissively agrees when Caroline strictly coldly commands him to genuinely see Nicole. Caroline softly suggests proudly wearing their magical matching bracelets together, leaving the clueless boy completely utterly confused. Overhearing endless gossip, Keios realizes Lady Nicole constantly wears the specific happy market bracelet these days. Remembering past trends, couples supposedly matched those magical bracelets, believing rumors about bringing ultimate happiness. Claiming he could never refuse his fiancée, a friend warmly confirms they also wore them. Utterly confused, Keios furiously wonders why Nicole has one since he absolutely never bought it. Panicking internally, he desperately questions whether she bought it herself or received it from another. Sweating profusely, the deeply horrified lord frantically denies the impossible reality, whispering it cannot be. Suddenly interrupting his panic, Princess Caroline firmly announces she wants to speak with Lady Nicole. Explaining her noble intentions, the perfect princess apologizes for selfishly taking up all his time. Formulating a direct plan, the confident princess officially decides to invite Nicole for afternoon tea. Receiving the unexpected personal royal invitation, Nicole logically concludes it can only mean one thing. Expecting complete rejection, she accurately assumes Caroline plans to steal Keios while demanding she step aside. Greeting her politely, the beautiful princess graciously thanks Lady Nicole for accepting her tea invitation. Gesturing gracefully toward the elegant table, Princess Caroline warmly invites the nervous girl to sit. Settling into the quiet room, Lady Nicole carefully takes her designated seat with elegant grace. Beginning the incredibly tense conversation, the noble princess formally states she absolutely must apologize first. Sincerely confessing her faults, Caroline regrets causing Nicole immense grief by overly relying on Keios. Waving her hands frantically, Nicole desperately begs the princess to stop apologizing for the situation. Admitting her past self would feel quite upset, Nicole honestly confesses completely lacking any care. Refusing to interfere, Nicole softly explains Keios finds ultimate happiness standing faithfully by Caroline's side. Smiling brightly, the surprisingly supportive fiancé loudly declares taking him abroad perfectly all right with her. Noting her beginner status, Caroline mentions hearing rumors about Lady Nicole recently intensely studying elegies. Politely asking her true motivation, Caroline listens as Nicole happily admits wanting to read foreign books. Visibly entirely shocked, Caroline clarifies Nicole truly possesses absolutely zero intentions of moving to Iliagel. Gasping in sudden realization, Nicole completely understands those strange recent rumors swirling around the campus. Accurately deducing the situation, Nicole realizes those dramatic rumors successfully convinced Caroline she might interfere. Reassuring the royal princess, Nicole solemnly swears she will absolutely never force him to stay. Dropping a massive bombshell, she casually announces being perfectly fine with breaking their engagement anytime. Staring in pure absolute shock, the normally perfectly composed princess silently stammers a bewildered apology. Finding her stunned reaction oddly amusing, Nicole watches Caroline struggle to process the broken engagement. Proposing a shocking alternative, Lady Nicole calmly suggests a loveless white marriage might perfectly be preferable. Explaining her terrible future prospects, Nicole fears breaking the engagement guarantees absolutely terrible problematic suitors. Pondering her ultimate ideal setup, she casually wonders if she could simply just stay here. Chuckling awkwardly at her own boldness, she politely wonders if prioritizing her convenience seems selfish. Realizing her absolute tragic miscalculation, the horrified princess firmly concludes the situation is significantly worse. Staring intensely with extreme disappointment, Princess Caroline fiercely aggressively calls out Keios by his name. Blinking in sheer utterly confused ignorance, Keios listens as Caroline warns about his impending loveless marriage. Pacing frantically around the room, he loudly wonders exactly how the chaotic situation completely turned out this way. Desperately defending his pride, he furiously screams he will never break their engagement or suggest a marriage blank. Princess Caroline notes her loyal friend completely misunderstood their relationship while acknowledging it is entirely their fault. Pondering the strange reaction, Caroline accurately observes the remarkably composed young girl completely lacks any obvious romantic jealousy. Agreeing completely with the incredibly smart observation, the highly wise friend eagerly confirms that exact crucial point. Analyzing her extreme cold indifference, they accurately conclude her actual romantic feelings toward Keios unfortunately remain just whatever. Recalling the incredibly busy flower festival, the highly perceptive friend confirms she genuinely completely disliked physically seeing him. Staring blankly at his highly observant friends, the completely thoroughly clueless Keios looks deeply profoundly confused by everything. Strategizing their critically important next move, Princess Caroline firmly suggests having a proper honest conversation with the girl. Leaning in incredibly close, his highly observant friend seriously asks to make absolutely sure Keios does not feel whatever. Blushing brightly with sudden deep conviction, Keios fiercely proudly boldly declares that he truly undeniably loves his beloved fiancé. Stuttering completely awkwardly, the deeply thoroughly relieved friends excitedly fiercely demand he absolutely immediately invite her for tomorrow. Standing tall with pure absolute fierce entirely new determination, Keios solemnly fiercely bravely promises to highly successfully romance Nicole. Meanwhile, an undeniably incredibly highly excited Nicole happily eagerly actively anticipates her newly ordered foreign book promptly arriving today. Approaching the incredibly excited young girl, a remarkably terribly nervous Lord Keios cautiously gently politely wishes her good morning. Bowing gracefully, the totally completely thoroughly uninterested girl politely formally excuses herself while sincerely graciously thanking Caroline for yesterday. Panicking entirely completely as she rapidly coldly walks away, Keios frantically loudly aggressively forcefully begs her to suddenly wait. Turning back with a genuinely incredibly intensely deeply wildly annoyed expression, she coldly formally asks exactly what he wants. Watching incredibly highly remarkably eagerly from afar, his supportive friends deeply hopefully boldly whisper pure immense encouragement for him. Taking a deep steadying breath, gathering his absolute unwavering courage, he boldly loudly announces their upcoming afternoon town date. Tilting her perfectly styled head in complete genuine confusion, she purely innocently assumes he absolutely means perfect Princess Caroline. Waving his shaking hands frantically in complete utter panic, he wildly fiercely aggressively strictly clarifies he explicitly means her. Frowning in incredibly deep profound utter confusion, she directly intensely fiercely questions his totally utterly bizarre random romantic motives. Desperately silently mouthing bold romantic advice, his frantic loyal friends urgently powerfully aggressively signal him to boldly confess his love. Ignoring their deeply profound romantic advice, he childishly loudly furiously screams that they are obviously officially properly royally engaged. Sighing heavily, she attempts to politely completely respectfully formally decline by vaguely citing incredibly important personal afternoon solo plans. Stubbornly ignoring her clear polite formal rejection, he confidently boldly proudly promises to promptly pick her up after class. Walking away, she completely sadly mourns her delayed independent reading while desperately frantically planning suitable royal princess conversational topics. Staring blankly at the beautiful incredibly empty peaceful path, she frustratingly completely utterly fails at brainstorming highly engaging topics. A perfectly quiet, entirely peaceful, deeply undeniably beautiful sunny afternoon slowly settles completely beautifully wonderfully over the bustling town. Standing proudly before a highly gorgeous elegant establishment, he confidently firmly proudly loudly joyfully announces their beautiful romantic destination. Flashing back to slightly earlier, his incredibly wise supportive friend forcefully aggressively absolutely strongly recommended this highly popular cafe. Continuing his deeply undeniably incredibly important romantic advice, his loyal wonderful friend strictly entirely forcefully demands learning her preferences. Stepping gracefully inside the incredibly busy highly elegant modern cafe, a bright cheerful friendly worker warmly welcomes Nicole inside. Smiling brightly with incredibly completely genuine total absolute joy, she enthusiastically entirely happily politely greets Mr. Ronald while Keios freezes. Observing the highly unusual incredibly quiet tense pair incredibly closely, Mr. Ronald curiously gently extremely politely asks about extra friends. Shocked completely by her sudden casual familiarity, Keios intensely, fiercely, curiously, aggressively, heavily asks if she previously visited this establishment. Realizing her deeply profound, heartbreaking, lonely past, he frantically, anxiously questions whether she actually previously visited this cafe entirely alone. Tilting her perfectly beautiful head defensively, she firmly, confidently, unapologetically, formally, politely confirms that she absolutely, definitely visited entirely alone. Shocked completely by her undeniably, incredibly bold independence, he furiously, loudly, fiercely, dramatically protests the incredible, immense danger to herself. Angrily glaring at the waiter, he fiercely questions what happens if someone approaches her with ulterior motives. Grabbing her tightly by the shoulders, he sternly commands her to instantly listen up right now. He strictly declares she is officially banned from going into town alone without telling him first. Utterly shocked by his sudden controlling demand, she stares back at him completely speechless and wide-eyed. Protesting that he is always incredibly busy, she listens while he furiously insists he can make time. Hesitantly agreeing, she watches closely as his sharp gaze suddenly falls directly upon her newly acquired accessory. Staring intently at the shimmering stones, he suspiciously points out that specific beautiful bracelet she wears. Casually glancing downward, she calmly explains that she actually bought the jewelry herself at the trader's market. Visibly taken aback, he questions if she went completely alone, which she cheerfully and confidently confirms. Noting it was a fashionable trend from last year, he listens as she sadly admits missing out. Smiling brightly at the colorful gems, she happily confesses how much she genuinely loved its stunning beauty. Reluctantly agreeing with her glowing assessment, he softly admits that the delicate piece is excellently crafted. Questioning its intended romantic use for couples, she quickly clarifies the merchant allowed buying just one. Looking incredibly frustrated and deeply emotionally hurt, he desperately asks why she completely refused taking him along. Pausing in absolute confusion, she misinterprets his growing anger and politely asks if he wanted Caroline's bracelet. He furiously clarifies he will firmly stay while Caroline marries into another distant royal foreign country. Explaining they will only meet at diplomatic gatherings, she worriedly asks if there is anything he can do. Interrupting her unhelpful suggestion about obtaining a royal queenly position, he forcefully shouts he refuses that. Desperately pleading his case, he insists they are merely childhood friends and vehemently denies having special feelings. Remaining highly skeptical of his wild confession, she hesitantly points out he constantly thinks about Caroline. Reminding him of last year, she bitterly recalls how he constantly suggested every item perfectly suited Caroline. She coldly notes his sword training was specifically for Caroline and recalls how visibly displeased he was. Frantically trying to properly explain himself, he desperately cries out her name while she calmly dismisses him. Declaring it better to passionately devote time to a loved one rather than a stranger, she embraces solitude. Deeply regretting his past foolish actions, he finally fully realizes his terrible conduct implied he loved Caroline. Clarifying she was merely a tomboyish friend, he explains her Royal Academy princess status strictly ended swordplay. Feeling terribly sad about her sadly holding back, he subconsciously always associated knightly battle gear with her. Confessing his deep inner truths, he heavily admits beautiful hair ornaments perfectly suited for Nicole caught his eye. Intimidated completely by her normal sweet femininity, he foolishly kept escaping back to his comfortable masculine friendship. Gazing deeply at her with profound romantic regret and desperate longing, he softly calls out her name. Completely unmoved by his passionate emotional confession, she coldly suggests that he simply does as he pleases. Calculating her bleak social prospects, she pragmatically notes breaking their current official engagement completely ruins future proposals. Suggesting they maintain their current distant relationship, she shockingly declares she genuinely wouldn't mind a loveless marriage. Completely defeated, he frantically wonders exactly how he is ever supposed to miraculously turn this romantic disaster around. Reacting to the sudden realization, he lets out a soft questioning noise of absolute utter despair. Yelling out in utter shock, he loudly exclaims yikes and woe while rapidly backing away in fear. Wondering if a white marriage is his only choice, he questions not having tea with Nicole anymore. Declaring he might as well become a nun, he loudly thinks about repenting at a quiet church. Telling him to completely calm down, his friend wisely suggests trying to magically win her back later. Hearing grand suggestions to write letters and plan dates, he notes she prefers being completely by herself. Laughing loudly that this is falling out of love, his friend watches him reject utterly useless dates. Vehemently denying he wants a marriage merely in writing, he vigorously objects to his closest friend's question. Advising him to do his absolute utmost to win back Lady Nicole, he deeply and desperately wonders how. Stating forcefully he must make her conscious of him as a fiancé again, his friend begins strategizing. Turning quickly toward Albert and Zeke, he directly asks how the two of them spend romantic time. Claiming they do absolutely nothing special, just the usual things Keios desperately begs them to teach him. Realizing they do normal enjoyable things like having lunch or attending events, Keios closely listens to advice. Noting they are absolutely always together, his friend aggressively questions if Keios ever had lunch with Nicole. Struck totally speechless by the extremely heavy accusation, he freezes up entirely while processing his massive failure. Breaking the incredibly tense and totally awkward silence, his friends nervously call out his name in confusion. Looking completely and utterly devastated, he finally admits out loud that he has absolutely never done that. Screaming that he is an imbecile and an absolute idiot, his friends violently berate his monumental foolishness. Wailing loudly, he severely panics while his friends dramatically declare that Lady Nicole was right to leave. Looking completely dead inside, Keios suffers while his friend admits equal fault for lacking basic romantic consideration. Admitting sheer inability to salvage the broken romance, his friend commands him to invite her for lunch. Firmly encouraging his devastated companion, his loyal friend aggressively insists that he can absolutely start right there. Gathering his remaining inner strength, he mentally prepares to finally approach her with his bold lunch invitation. Stepping forward with suddenly renewed determination, he makes his swift approach toward his completely unsuspecting beautiful fiancée. Standing silently before her presence, he desperately tries to muster the exact right words to convey everything. Speaking incredibly softly, he anxiously calls out her lovely name while masking his immense inner panic. Waiting patiently for her immediate response, he stands perfectly still as the intense silence deeply stretches. Wondering what Keios wanted yesterday, she clearly recalls him turning white and totally silent after their tea. Assuming he was feeling unwell, she patiently waits until her dear friend finally apologizes for the delay. Heading to the lunch hall, she firmly assumes he remains shocked about Princess Caroline finding another match. Wondering happily about today's lunch, she abruptly screams in sheer terror as a loud bang suddenly erupts. Clutching her rapidly beating heart, she nervously admits aloud that the sudden terrifying noise truly scared her. Looking up in utter bewilderment, she hesitantly calls out Lord Keios's familiar name within the crowded hallway. Desperately shouting for a confused Nicole to stop, he frantically begs her to share a lovely lunch. Sliding aggressively to a sudden halt, he strictly commands her to quickly stay right there in place. Panicking wildly at his intense approach, her loyal guards frantically shout to safely escort Lady Nicole away. Swiftly grabbing her confused form, they agree to leave immediately while she lets out a bewildered gasp. Chasing after them frantically, he loudly begs them to wait a minute and vigorously demands their destination. Stopping his desperate pursuit instantly, a stern voice calls out his official noble title with chilling authority. Glaring down fiercely, the authoritative figure coldly demands to know exactly what he is trying to achieve. Confronting the unexpected visitor, the man demands his true reason for entering the classroom, causing total confusion. Stating it is noon, he explains he simply came to invite Nicole for lunch, prompting further suspicion. Expressing sheer disbelief, the rival sarcastically points out that he has absolutely never shared lunch with her. Grunting in sheer frustration, the cornered noble defensively questions the reasoning behind this incredibly sudden change. Aggressively demanding they move out of his way, he deeply insists the situation has nothing concerning them. Pausing thoughtfully, the confronting student mockingly considers if the matter truly has absolutely nothing involving him. Dramatically raising his commanding voice, the unyielding student abruptly shouts a major turning point into the conversation. Proclaiming absolute justice, the man fiercely declares he cannot overlook a delicate woman suffering sudden domestic violence. Noting that abusers remain painfully oblivious, the accuser quickly enrages Keios, who vehemently denies causing domestic violence. Screaming his utter innocence, the bewildered noble is immediately ordered to be tied up without any excuses. Struggling wildly against the binding ropes, he desperately demands to know what Emilio is suddenly planning now. Smiling with intense dark satisfaction, the fierce leader calmly announces that they will deeply investigate the matter. Commanding his loyal followers with utmost authority, the stern interrogator boldly orders them to bring the device. Staring with extreme bulging eyes, the completely bound captive reacts with sudden sheer terror at the sight. Panicking endlessly over the Western lie detector invention, the bound captive frantically questions what they are doing. Gesturing confidently, the stern interrogator coldly commands the captive to answer all following questions with basic absolutes. Leaning forward fiercely, the brutal accuser directly questions if the bound man threw stones at his fiancée. Wondering why Keios suddenly visited during their break, she completely misses the chaotic violent interrogation happening nearby. Pondering the strange situation deeply, she curiously considers the highly shocking possibility of a genuine lunch invitation. Quickly dismissing her wildly hopeful thoughts, she bitterly and coldly rejects the absurd idea that he would care. Enjoying the lovely weather, she happily decides to eat on the terrace while fully relishing her solitude. Interrupting her wonderfully peaceful solitary afternoon, a loud, enthusiastic group suddenly calls out Lady Nicole very warmly. Promising to always firmly protect her from now on, the cheerful boys happily invite her to lunch. Smiling brightly at her quickly formed protective entourage, she joyfully realizes she is not truly alone anymore. Acknowledging the distant shouting far away, she happily concludes there is still much to enjoy without Keios. Walking forward gracefully, she notices the number 4 symbol alongside a faint sound echoing loudly nearby. Glancing around, she suddenly spots intriguing markings displaying 200 and 117. Feeling immense excitement, she reflects on how the fantastic theater performance completely surpassed the impressive original book. Basking in her incredibly good mood, she happily decides to enjoy some relaxing tea before heading home. Approaching her favorite quiet establishment, she carefully notices the bold prominent character sign hanging beautifully outside. Greeting Mr. Ronald warmly, she listens as he gladly and enthusiastically welcomes her back again today. Asking where she went all dressed up, he listens intently as she casually mentions seeing a play. Realizing they share common interests, he excitedly notes that he recently saw that quite interesting popular play. Continuing their pleasant conversation, she smiles softly while subtly noticing another faint number 4 marked nearby. Frustrated by her sudden absence, he angrily wonders where that Nicole went without telling him again. Spotting a familiar figure in the distance, he suddenly gasps in shock and loudly calls out Nicole. Greeting him casually, the friendly waiter acknowledges Nicole's friend while she questions Lord Keios' sudden unexpected appearance. Demanding his purpose, she frowns while Keios furiously agonizes over her joining that flippant waiter. Explaining her completely innocent actions, she firmly confirms she was simply sharing thoughts about the fascinating play. Hearing her totally unexpected calm explanation, Keios completely freezes in utter shock and profound speechless confusion. Overhearing them discuss amazing singing and staging, he completely panics, assuming they secretly attended the theater together. Blankly questioning his worth to Nicole the next day, his friend casually suggests inviting her to town. Surprised to learn her Count Fiancé is the princess's childhood friend, Nicole wonders about receiving better proposals. Acknowledging rumors of the princess being incredibly boyish, she also notes her undeniably beautiful, striking physical appearance. Standing gracefully together, the pair presents an intimidating picture of royal elegance and lifelong close personal companionship. Fearing his constant proximity to the beautiful princess, she worries he might ultimately be disappointed in her. Resolving to make a strong, memorable impression, she desperately decides she must look her absolute very best. Preparing carefully for the nerve-wracking introductory meeting, she intensely focuses on perfecting her elegant, formal physical appearance. Gazing upon him for the very first time, she nervously confirms this imposing person is Lord Keios. Letting out a soft, hesitant gasp, she stands awkwardly while trying to process the extremely overwhelming moment. Reassuring her nervous, lingering doubts, a comforting older voice explains that all boys act exactly like that initially. Promising future harmony, the voice assures they will surely get along once they enroll and spend time. Gripping her hands tightly, she hesitantly supposes they will eventually see each other every day at the academy. Filled with sudden renewed internal determination, she passionately vows to do her absolute best to get along. Stepping forward with deeply hopeful expectations, she prepares to bridge the awkward gap dividing their arranged relationship. Taking a decisive forward walking step, she boldly initiates the daunting psychological process of building lasting connections. Approaching casually from the side, his familiar male friend warmly greets Keios after the highly anticipated meeting. Curious about the crucial initial encounter, his friend eagerly asks how meeting his newly arranged fiancé went. Groaning miserably in utter sheer despair, Keios completely shocks his friend with his suddenly devastating physical reaction. Panicking completely at his intense emotional distress, his confused friend frantically asks what went wrong and happened. Frantically stammering in complete utter disbelief, Keios desperately attempts to explain his unbelievable fiancée compared to Caroline. Reacting to his incredibly shocking, ridiculous revelation that she was actually a girl, his friend sarcastically confirms. Completely overwhelmed, he nervously describes her horribly fragile ribbons and incredibly soft fluffy skirt breaking extremely easily. Struggling to comprehend this delicate fragile girl, he mockingly questions his own identity upon seeing one initially. Sighing deeply, he exhaustedly complains that being around this entirely different, terrifying, fragile species made him incredibly nervous. Threateningly demanding he pick up a sword, his fiercely tomboyish friend loudly reminds him they are same species. Listening to his rapidly pounding chest, he nervously worries that seeing her every day will become a serious problem. Ignoring his questioning friend, he remains blissfully unaware that he will eventually heavily regret calling feelings problematic. Desperately grasping a fictional romance guide, he frantically questions exactly what being a loving romantic couple actually entails. Staring blankly at the colorful page, he softly reads out the confusingly abstract concepts of lovers and love. Suddenly noticing strange fluffy rabbit ears appearing from nowhere, he confusedly calls out Nicole's name in utter surprise. Scrambling frantically after her suddenly rapidly fleeing form, he desperately yells out, asking exactly where she is going. Stumbling forward in deep utter confusing darkness, he barely manages to utter her name before the scene shifts. Screaming loudly in absolute sheer panicked terror, he hopelessly plummets downward into a chaotic, completely dark, unknown void. Groaning in immense throbbing pain, he confusedly wonders what is happening as commanding voices demand rising for majesty. Looking upward in total sheer absolute bewilderment, he hesitantly questions if the imposing majestic figure is Princess Caroline. Glaring down with intense absolute fiery fury, the towering royal aggressively questions his pathetic recurring annoying tiny presence. Condemning his numerous cruel unfeeling acts towards Lady Nicole, the imposing queen declares he absolutely cannot be forgiven. Swinging a massive heavy sharpened blade downward, the furious executioner violently screams for his absolute immediate total decapitation. Wailing in sheer utter absolute blind panic, the terrified noble screams uncontrollably while facing his violently impending doom. Observing his violently thrashing panicked body, his highly concerned friend desperately tries shaking him awake from the nightmare. Smiling proudly at a newly finished manga manuscript, a completely separate author joyfully declares this one a masterpiece. Explaining a marriage blank, the text describes it strictly as a loveless marriage contract between spouses. Questioning Nicole's drastic choices, he angrily realizes this arrangement essentially equates to a completely pretend marriage. Clenching his fists tightly in utter desperation, he fiercely promises that he is not giving up. Sprinting rapidly through the academy halls, he urgently, desperately attempts to completely escape his current predicament. Searching frantically for their escaped target, his relentless aggressive pursuers angrily demand everyone to find him. Startled by the completely absurd sequence of events, his confused friend loudly questions what just happened. Explaining his failed lunch invitation, he angrily recounts getting caught and hooked up to a lie detector. Pondering the absolutely ridiculous situation, he thoroughly questions exactly where this bizarre domestic violence allegation originated. Clutching his fiercely throbbing head, he exhausted admits that this entire confusing situation is a puzzle. Cursing in sheer absolute frustration, he fiercely demands to know why these people treat him criminally. Acknowledging the confusing violence rumors, his serious friend gravely warns that reaching Nicole will remain problematic. Panicking over Nicole being completely surrounded by freakish classmates, he frantically suggests urgently changing her classes. Accepting deep personal responsibility for the chaotic situation, a determined friend promises to clear the misunderstanding. Searching carefully through numerous nearby locations, he finally spots his intended target and happily announces success. Reaching out swiftly toward his rapidly fleeing target, he intensely mutters that he needs little more. Pausing gracefully in the quiet academy corridor, a beautifully mysterious figure suddenly appears in the shadows. Presenting a wonderfully polite offering, the elegant stranger gently extends a token intended strictly for her. Accepting the completely unexpected item with mild surprise, she politely thanks the mysterious noble lady aloud. Noticing highly unusual details, she cautiously notes that these strange individuals do not seem from the academy. Feeling incredibly uncomfortable with the deeply invasive physical contact, she firmly demands the stranger let go. Realizing the sudden highly inappropriate overstep, the mysterious figure smoothly offers swift apologies for the intrusion. Praising her diligent after-school studying habits, the unexpected visitor deeply confuses the hard-working noble lady completely. Staring in complete utter bewilderment, the thoroughly startled girl anxiously questions how the stranger knows her name. Staring intently with deep serious focus, the mysterious figure slowly and dramatically calls out Lady Nicole. Leaning forward incredibly earnestly, the intense stranger passionately declares having an absolutely crucial message to tell. Pleading desperately for complete absolute trust, the stranger emotionally claims that her heart could genuinely burst. Recognizing the familiar striking features beneath the disguise, she utterly shocks herself by identifying Princess Caroline. Bursting onto the chaotic scene violently, Keios aggressively demands to know what on earth is happening. Pointing aggressively toward the strange romantic situation, she loudly calls out Lord Keios in deep confusion. Frantically defending his wildly unusual drastic actions, he loudly insists he is merely clearing the misunderstanding. Explaining her incredibly convincing masculine disguise, Caroline earnestly claims she sincerely always believed she was manlike. Desperately trying to clear lingering romantic doubts, she insists they strictly view each other as male friends. Reassuring the completely charming lady, she claims she would happily wear masculine clothes to the academy. Screaming fiercely at the princess, Keios furiously demands she completely let go of Nicole right now. Annoyed by the sudden loud interruption, Caroline fiercely yells that she was reaching the good part. Arguing aggressively over the ridiculous, highly convincing disguise, Keios utterly questions the absolute necessity of men's clothing. Ignoring the loudly bickering noble, the disguised princess desperately pleads for Lady Nicole to simply believe. Staring deeply into her profoundly confused eyes, Caroline calmly suggests simply thinking of her as male. Emphasizing their completely platonic relationship, she loudly declares that Keios has always treated her masculine. Teasing a truly massive, hilarious revelation, she excitedly asks if Nicole knows what he originally said. Mocking her sudden dramatic appearance, he fiercely questions if she is resorting to cross-dressing now. Outraged by the terrible disrespect, she loudly proclaims that he is being incredibly cruel. Demanding he let go of Nicole, she angrily recalls his cruel attempt to tear her clothes off. Continuing her fierce tirade, she loudly declares that he has simply always completely lacked any tact. Calling him a pathetic man, she screams that he has no idea how to handle sweet Nicole. Groaning in sudden pain, Keios frantically calls out for Lady Nicole while desperately insisting he is serious. Staring in complete utter bewilderment, the thoroughly shocked observers confusedly mutter while trying to process everything. Startled by the library committee, a stern member strictly demands everyone to please keep absolutely quiet. Desperately wanting to study in peace, Nicole hesitantly asks the chaotic group if she may finally leave. Whispering secretive rumors to each other, the fascinated academy students eagerly ask if anyone has heard. Spreading wild gossip, the excited students frantically claim Princess Caroline was actively trying to seduce Lady Nicole. Questioning the bizarre romantic situation, they eagerly wonder why she is stealing Lady Nicole from Lord Keios. Gasping softly in utter dramatic disbelief, the astonished noble ladies heavily sigh at the scandalous unfolding events. Thrilled by the intense academy drama, the gossiping crowd excitedly declares it a forbidden love triangle. Pondering the bizarre chaotic confrontation, the students endlessly wonder what Caroline and Keios were trying to do. Praising her dashing masculine disguise, the suffocating crowd wildly cheers for the exceptionally beautiful Princess Caroline. Wishing to remain completely unnoticed, she tiredly insists that they really do not need to concern themselves. Remembering the bustling academy schedule, she quietly recalls that there is another grand soiree happening next week. Explaining the tri-monthly socialization event, the text notes most people traditionally attend the soiree alongside their fiancés. Feeling it is a waste of time hiding, she sadly assumes Lord Keios will accompany Princess Caroline. Hoping to avoid the painful social gathering, she wonders if professors would allow her extra study time. Furiously scolding him for complicating matters, his friend insists he only needed to promise Nicole absolute faithfulness. Turning his intense wrath toward Princess Caroline, he aggressively scolds her while she timidly apologizes for everything. Begging her to stop behaving carelessly before marriage, he angrily warns against rumors of stealing subjects' fiancés. Warning her severely about losing her royal title, he strictly insists she cannot become crown princess otherwise. Boasting about looking vastly more handsome than Keios, she innocently claims she only got Nicole visibly excited. Rejecting his frantic protests, Caroline confidently argues that the dumbfounded Nicole was secretly not against her disguise. Defending his beloved fiancé with fierce utter desperation, Keios loudly screams that Caroline is entirely horribly mistaken. Taunting his complete romantic failures, she smugly suggests Nicole has already moved on from such spineless men. Screaming to stop making assumptions, he fiercely declares he can win her back while friends beg for peace. Realizing the escalating argument is incredibly troublesome, the observant friends quickly conclude leaving them alone achieves absolutely nothing. Concluding they have absolutely no other choice, the desperate group decides they cannot care about appearances anymore. Preparing to execute a completely wild romantic intervention, the exhausted loyal friends firmly declare time for drastic measures.